Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of the second leg of the 2017 Grand Chess Tour. They were in Paris in France for the first leg and only a few days later they went to Leuven in Belgium for the second leg. 3 days of rapid, 2 days of blitz. In Paris it was Magnus Carlsen who won the tournament after a playoff with Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. In Leuven it was Wesley So who dominated the rapid section. He won that part of the tournament, but Magnus Carlsen came back with a vengeance in the blitz section, completely dominating the field and winning the tournament outright. Let's listen to former world champion Garry Kasparov about Magnus Carlsen's performance.
I have to say it was a phenomenal performance. I was under the impression that while everybody played blitz, Magnus played chess. It's amazing to see that the quality of many of his moves is almost as good as in classical chess. So some good ideas, a good calculation, and he played very fast. Though he spent a lot of time, but the crucial moments, almost perfect decisions. And when you could see him crushing MVL, as he did, it's with sacrifices and just totally paralyzing him, and then winning the totally drawing endgame against Ivanchuk, having less time on the clock. That tells you that he totally dominates the field, and it's really a big victory. It's not just the score, but it's also the quality of the performance.
This is from the 21st round of the tournament, played on the 2nd of July 2017. White Magnus Carlsen, black Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. And as said, this game was highlighted by Garry Kasparov, so let's have a look at it. Carlsen opened c4, e5, we have an English opening, e3. Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan in the broadcast said it doesn't have a great reputation to get an advantage. The fianchetto of bishop f1 to g2 is more promising in his opening. Knight f6, knight c3, knight c6. And now look at this move. On the fourth move, Magnus Carlsen corked out g2, g4. And all three commentators in the live broadcast said, wow, it's very aggressive. Bishop b4 and g5. Vachier-Lagrave took on c3. And now Carlsen could have taken on f6. Then the bishop goes back to b4 and f takes g7. That pawn was on g2 at the start of the game, and now after 7 moves it's already on g7. But after rook g8, black is a bit better. White's idea could be to play queen h5, bishop h3, and then move the knight from g1 to e2 to g3 to the nice square on f5. But that takes a long time, and Carlsen did not want to go for this variation. He just, after bishop takes c3, took the bishop back, b takes c3. Now Vachier-Lagrave has to save his knight, back to g8, and d4 from Carlsen, sacrificing that brave pawn on g5. Vachier-Lagrave took it, d5, kicking the knight back to d8, d6, and c6 from MVL. He could have taken on d6 and then queen takes, and black will find it difficult to develop his pieces. After the move from the game, c6, Grandmaster Seirawan said, this looks like a Nimzo Indian gone horribly wrong for white. He's a pawn down, doubled pawns on the c-file. All his pieces are on the first rank. That's not how we teach chess. And if you or I do this, then it's indeed bad. But when the world champion does it, it seems to be okay. Knight f3, queen f5. Of course, black's big problem is the bishop on c8. He'll find it very difficult to develop that piece. Rook g1, knight e6, defending the g7 pawn. And Carlsen sacrificed another pawn, e4, to keep his initiative going. Queen takes with check, bishop e3. Now the threat is bishop d3, trapping the black queen. So MVL went with his queen to f5, knight g5, hoping to take the knight on e6, and then rook takes g7, winning a pawn back and setting up an attack. Knight f4, bishop takes, and queen takes. Here Sarah1 commented, "This is one of the strangest blitz games I've ever seen. 2 pawns down." But of course, bishop c8 is still a problem for black, and that is what Carlsen's play is based on. Rook g4, kicking the queen back, queen f6, knight e4, hitting the queen again, queen went to h6, and queen f3. And if you give this position to the computer, white already has more than enough compensation for the 2 pawns. Knight f6 from MVL. He says, "I'm 2 pawns up, I want to swap pieces," but here comes a beautiful move from Carlsen. Rook takes g7. What a great shot. You cannot take on e4 because there's mate in 2, queen takes f7 check, king d8 and queen e7 is checkmate. So MVL took the rook, queen takes g7, knight takes f6 check, king d8, and now that pawn on d6 and the knight on f6 are dominating black's position. Queen f5 from Carlsen with the threat queen takes e5 and then queen e7. So Vachier-Lagrave decides to give back the exchange. If he gives the exchange, he'll still be a pawn up. Rook e8 he played. Carlsen took. King takes and c5. That c5 d6 is a beautiful bind on black's position. b5 from Vachier-Lagrave, trying to create something, trying to develop his queenside. Bishop d3. f6, king e2, king f7, and you really cannot see black's queenside, rook a8 and bishop c8 getting into the game anytime soon. Here comes a very instructive move from Carlsen, rook h1. That's the way to activate your last inactive piece. There's 2 ideas, one we see in the game, the other one is to play h4, then the rook from h1 to h3 to g3, and then you have activated your rook. Rook b8 from MVL, and now we see the other way to activate that rook, king f1, with the idea of playing rook g1, activating the rook. Queen g6. Carlsen does not want to swap the queens, he plays queen f3, queen h6. That queen was attacked on g6 by the bishop on d3, so it went to h6. Rook g1 as planned. Bishop a6, trying to develop that piece. Queen g4. Rook d8. Rook g3. And here MVL played e4, giving his extra pawn back to try and activate his rook. Carlsen took the pawn. And here he only had 6 seconds on the clock, plus a 3-second delay, but he played everything instantly. Rook e8 is planned from Vachier-Lagrave, queen g4, attacking d7 with check. MVL played bishop c8, protecting d7, king g2, white's king is safe, queen g5, queen f3, does not want to swap the queens, and queen d5, now forcing the queen exchange. Queen takes, c takes. Carlsen took the pawn on h7. Rook e5, finally activating that rook. f4, kicking the rook. Rook e2 check. King f1. Rook takes pawn. Bishop g8 check. King f8. Bishop takes d5 with the threat of rook g8 checkmate. So you have to go back with your rook. You had finally activated that rook, but it has to go back to the bottom rank. King f2. Black is completely paralyzed. Bishop a6. King e3. King e8. King d4. Nothing black can do against white's king march to the queen side. King d8. Rook g7. One of the ideas is rook f7 takes f6, bishop c8 from black, and here comes the final breakthrough. c6 from Carlsen, d takes, and bishop takes c6. One of the threats is rook to a7 to a8 and then push the d6 pawn to d7, winning the bishop. Vachier-Lagrav's last move was a5, and after king c5 he resigned. White wins the queenside pawns and black has no defense. The rook on h8 has to stay on the bottom rank because of the checkmate. It's totally hopeless for black. Let's listen to Grandmaster Yasser just after this game was finished.
That was one of the most bizarre blitz games I've ever seen. That was just crazy. What was Magnus doing? And then it worked out like a dream.
Yeah.
Everything.
Moves you were playing e4, rook g7, you had this incredible kind of chess.
Yeah, so I burned my bridges pretty early on, so I just had to keep going. Yeah, I mean, with his lack of development, material doesn't really matter that much. So I just try to, play as aggressively as possible.
When you were in,
Well, I've played the move g4 myself, so it's not a particularly good move, but I think he was just in the mood for it. But as he said, at some moment he just couldn't go back. He had to continue throwing pieces on the and pawns on the bonfire, and he confused MVL. So it was great, and a brilliant game. Loved it.
that's the right.
Let's now look at the other game that Kasparov mentioned, the game against Vasily Ivanchuk. From the 22nd round, so the round after Carlsen's game with Vachier-Lagrave, he was in a good mood. This is the position after 29 c7 c5 from Carlsen. Ivanchuk is white, Carlsen is black. We have a knight endgame with 5 pawns each. In theory, white is better with the split pawns on the queen side, but black should be able to hold a draw. On top of that, Ivanchuk had more time than Carlsen, so he could try and play for a win. Well, it turned out differently. b3 is an idea here, and then bring your king into the center, but Ivanchuk played king d2, also a fine move. c4. As Yasser said, he did not want to see that pawn that he was going to target come up the board so fast. Carlsen plays very actively in this endgame. Knight f4 from Ivanchuk, king c5, h4, a5, g4, knight d5, and knight e2. Ivanchuk did not want to swap the knights. He thought he was worse in that pawn endgame, a very complicated pawn endgame. Let's have a quick look. Knight takes d5, king takes d5, king c3. Only black here has winning chances. g5 is a move, and then black's king is more active than white's king. But it's very complicated. With very little time on the clock, Ivanchuk did not want to go for that. So he played knight e2, g6, c3 to stop black's idea of playing c3 himself. King d6. And now knight d4 is a good move, but Ivanchuk played f4. And now Carlsen played a very strong reply, h5. And the g-pawn has to either go up the board or take on h5, and that will give black's king a route into white's position. Ivanchuk played g5, a4 from Carlsen, king e1, knight e3, knight g3, and knight g2 check, and Ivanchuk immediately resigned. Carlsen is going to win the pawn on h4, and then the black h-pawn will be very strong, running down the board, and as we know, knights have a tough time controlling pawns on the side of the board. Ivanchuk did not want to play this position anymore. He resigned. With less time on the clock, Carlsen outplayed a very strong opponent in a knight endgame. Very impressive. Carlsen did not have much to say after the tournament. He said it felt good. He said that he's looking forward to some rest and that he was very happy with the way the tournament was organized, and thanked the organizer for putting up a great show. The final standings of the 2017 Leuven Grand Chess Tour. Carlsen the winner like he was in Paris, as you can see, by a 3-point margin over Wesley So, who had dominated the rapid section. But you can see how Carlsen did in the blitz. 14.5 points out of 18 games is quite incredible. And as you can see, he's 4.5 points ahead in the blitz section, ahead of Vachier-Lagrave and Garry, who had 10 points. For the Grand Chess Tour, Carlsen picked up 13 points and a check for $37,500. Wesley So picked up 10 points and $25,000, and you can see the remaining participants. Hope you enjoyed this video on the 2017 Leuven Grand Chess Tour. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. Please leave a comment. And if you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on YouTube or on other social media. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick from Chess to Impress. Thank you very much for watching.